and issues pursuant to international law. Today's topic is net neutrality and regulation of the Internet. World Cybersecurity Forum is an internationally renowned cyber consultancy web community founded in 2019 that aims to improving cybersecurity awareness and act of the sources of the techno-legal information professionals for the professionals, students, and teenagers around the world. On 1st April 2020, World Cybersecurity Forum launches Cybercrime Awareness Program, which is a global initiative to support emerging trends in cyber law, cybercrime, and cybersecurity, increasing the level of cyber awareness throughout through the education system and the training system. The World Cybersecurity Forum is working as a bridge between SCC Online. We are in collaboration with SCC Online, and SCC Online brought to you by Eastern Book Company, a publishing house of international repute and acknowledged leader in the field of law publishing in India for more than 75 years. EBC publishes a wide range of legal commentaries, student texts, and law reports, and its products includes pioneering works both in the print and the electronic medium. Using the finest of the technology innovation, they provide us information database for making law easier and accessible to all. Second Symposium Series on Cybercrime and Issue. The Symposium Series, Cybercrime and the Issues Pursuant to the International Law, is to provide a practical approach in terms of emerging cybercrimes and cybersecurity law on international level. As technology is evolving rapidly, so human beings are, and during the expedition, need to know a lot about it and remove all the obstacles. Also, it will be more inclined towards the conclusive part, where our honorable speaker will try to give us all the preservative measures. This symposium includes 5 sessions, and from today we are starting with our amazing journey with Mr. Raghav, who is advocate enrolled with the Bar Council of Delhi. He holds master degree in information technology and media law from London School of Economics. He specialized in the area of freedom of speech, privacy, and criminal law, and consulted with the Stanford Center of Internet and Society and Columbia's Global Center for Freedom of Expression on these issues. He will be addressing the topic net neutrality and regulations of Internet. During the program, it is suggested that all the participants should turn off their audio and video for an uninterrupted session. And to avail the e-certificate, it is mandatory to fill the feedback form, which will be provided on your Zoom chat box soon. I'll request Sir Raghav to please address us. So,
good evening. If you're joining us from India and wherever you're joining us from, thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks to the organizers for having me here. Today, I don't know what the composition of our audience is. So I will start with the basics, and we will then move on to addressing some of the particular questions that you have. I intend on making this session extremely interactive. So I will only be talking for the first 20 to 25 minutes. If my internet is unstable in the middle, and if my voice is cracking, if any of you could just drop a message on the chat, and we'll pause and we'll try to fix that accordingly, right? So again, we're assuming that the audience is people who don't know too much about net neutrality, but are keen on learning about how the internet must be regulated and how the internet must be governed. So at the very beginning, what exactly is net neutrality, right? Today, if you're making a call on WhatsApp in India, it's possible for you to do that. But if you have friends or colleagues in Dubai, if you try making a WhatsApp call to them from India to Dubai, WhatsApp does not permit that. This is because telecom operators in Dubai do not allow voice over IP calls, which means that they differentiate between data of a certain kind versus data of a different kind. However, in India, discrimination is not permitted. So essentially, net neutrality is the principle that an internet service provider must treat all internet communications equally, which means an internet service provider, and an internet service provider in this case would be Jio or Airtel, it treats all communication equally, and it does not differentiate between users, between content types, between the type of equipment you're using to access that information, which means that Airtel or Jio cannot tell us that we will give you this amount of speed if you're watching Netflix, and we'll give you this amount of speed if you're doing a Zoom call on a Saturday evening talking about net neutrality, right? Airtel or Jio are not making that decision. As per law today, there is equality in terms of how ISPs treat different kinds of data, right? Now, this is basically what net neutrality is. How is it that ISPs can, so when they currently treat us equally, how is it that they cannot treat us equally? There are different ways ISPs can do this. So ISPs can do this through something which is known as bandwidth throttling, which means that they will ensure that for a certain kind of data or to a certain user, or if you're using a certain kind of equipment, you get a slower bandwidth to access content versus a different user using a different platform or accessing a different content who gets higher bandwidth, right? This is one way of doing it. Another way that ISPs can differentiate is through zero rating, which means that certain services will be given to users for free. So this is what happens when ISPs get into a contract or get into an agreement with certain platforms, and they say that, if you have you can use unlimited data from this website or from this platform for free, on if you're using our internet connection, right? So these are just some ways in which you can ISPs can differentiate. um, Again, if you have any questions in the middle, or if if you'd like me to slow down, or if you'd like me to hurry up, feel free to use the chat. I'm intending on making this session as interactive as possible, right? So I'm assuming we now have a basic idea of what net neutrality is. But the question then becomes, why is net neutrality important? Net neutrality becomes important because if you treat the internet as a public good, and if you treat it as a means for accessing information, then net neutrality is what ensures a level playing field. Net neutrality is what ensures that today, if I start an e-commerce business in India, Geo does not give preference to Geo's marketplace, and it does not discriminate against mine. It means that for all users of Geo, they will use the same amount of data, they'll get the same amount of speed if they're using my platform versus Geo's marketplace, right? So at the very beginning, this ensures that there is competition in the market. From a public good perspective, it also ensures that it maintains a framework of access to information. Now, look at it this way. If there is not net neutrality in a particular jurisdiction, ISPs become in a very powerful position in a way that they can either completely block or they can throttle certain kinds of content so that users do not access that content. Let me give you an example. Let us say that so let us say Netflix is running documentaries on corruption in the telecom sector in India, including in Jio, Airtel, etc. And as compared to Prime, which is only doing entertainment programs, etc. Now, Geo does not want you to look at these documentaries about corruption in the telecom sector, but they're happy for you to watch Friends on Prime Video, or they're happy for you to watch a movie on Prime Video. So if there weren't net neutrality, Geo would be able to ensure that access to information is blocked, right? That is another reason why net neutrality becomes important. A third, and so these are the two basic reasons why net neutrality is important in any country, and especially a developing country. And to explain, let me give you an example, and I'll tell you how we reached the current framework for net neutrality in India through a story. So this story starts in 2014, when Airtel, at the end of December 2014, decided that platforms like WhatsApp and Skype, they're allowing users to make calls through mobile data. Now, if WhatsApp is allowing me to make a call, why will I make a voice call using Airtel's network? So Airtel was losing out on very important revenue due to this. So what Airtel did was it came up with a different data plan, which said that if you want to use VoIP or voice over internet protocol services such as WhatsApp, Skype, you'll have to choose a different plan. And this was it was priced at a different price. So it said that you'll get 3 GB of data, or it was something of that sort, for 75 rupees, and it'll be valid for a month. Which means in addition to the mobile data that you're paying for, if you wanted to use WhatsApp or Skype, you would have to pay us additional money. So it starts with Airtel wanting to, compete with WhatsApp and Skype and not have them bite into its revenue. This was compounded with Facebook. Facebook tied up with Reliance Communications, as it then was, and it wanted to start a program called the Facebook Free Basics program. So Facebook's idea was that India is a developing country and it has more and more users who are trying to access the internet. You have more and more first-time users. You have users in rural areas who may not be accessing the internet through fancy smartphones, and therefore they do not have, they don't have access to unlimited data. So Facebook started this program called the Facebook Free Basics program, and it tied up with Reliance Communications, and it said that we will give our users free access to 38 internet services, which means that if you access these 38 services on Reliance Communications, this does not eat into your monthly data cap. Now, these 38 services obviously included certain services from Facebook itself. It included some news organizations such as BBC. It included some marketplaces. And basically the point was that, let's say if you're getting, and bear in mind this is 2015, so let's say you were getting 5 GB of data a month. Facebook said that for these 38 websites, if you want to access these websites, then we don't eat into your cap of that 5 GB a month, right? So in addition to to Airtel's sort of attempt to charge more money for VoIP platforms, now we had Facebook and Reliance also getting together to see if they could start charging discriminatory prices for different services. Now this led to TRAI coming into picture. TRAI, for us who do not know, is the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. This is a statutory body that was established by the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India Act 1997, and this is the body that basically governs all disputes arising from the telecom sector, and it is basically the body that works in consultation with the government in order to frame laws and in order to consult with stakeholders in the area, right? The TRAI Act 97 also establishes the TDSAT, or the Telecom Dispute Settlement and Appellate Authority, and therefore TRAI is the body that was in charge of governing Airtel and Jio and Reliance Communications, as it then was. So TRAI came up with a consultation paper, and it said that we'd like to invite comments from all the people out there and tell us what you think about these two services, and tell us how you'd like the over-the-top internet platforms to be governed. And basically, this is opening it up to the public to discuss net neutrality. Now, there's this organization called Media Nama, and it's founded by an amazing individual who's called Mr. Nikhil Pava. He started a program called the Save the Internet.in program, right? And this was a movement which was lobbying civil society and human rights organizations to reach out to TRAI when they'd opened out this process for consultation and tell them that this is why net neutrality is important, and this is why the absence of net neutrality will be very dangerous for the future of the internet in India. Now, Mr. Nikhil Pava ran a very smart and a very important campaign with multiple stakeholders. It was Mr. Pava and a whole lot of other organizations who would come on board. They ran a campaign, as some of you may remember. They also got in touch with AIB, and AIB came up with a video that was titled Save the Internet, and it was basically a short explainer video of what net neutrality is to the uninitiated, and it explained why net neutrality should be important, right? So this campaign was a spectacular success, thankfully for all of us today. And TRAI, generally, when it came out with consultation processes or when it came out with consultation papers, it would get a few hundred responses, or sometimes a little more or a little less than that. But it was always, often, unless the issue was very, very important, it was a very nominal. Yes. So it was generally a nominal kind of consultation, but for the first time, due to the efforts of Mr. Pava and Media Nama and other organizations, TRI received over 1 million responses to this consultation paper. Now, TRI obviously came under pressure and they realized that there is a lot of civil society and human rights organizations and techies support for net neutrality. So in 2016, about 8 or 9 months after it came up, after it opened the consultation process, TRI said it came out with the regulations. And for the first time, it said that any kind of discrimination by ISPs would not be permissible as per TRI, right? So this basically in 2016, for the first time, there was recognition that any kind of discrimination, whether it was through Facebook's Free Basics program or Airtel's Zero program or any other program of the sort, would not be permissible. Now, between 2016 and 2018, this process, these recommendations were formalized. And in 2018, the Department of Telecommunications formalized this. And even though it did not come up with a legislation to the effect, this is now a part of, it's a part of formal Indian law that says that net neutrality is now a basic principle that governs telecom operators in India. So this was the story as to how we got here today. Now I'd like to open it up for questions. But before we do, I'll give you a little bit of context of where we are today, right? Post 2018. So as COVID has changed all our lives, net neutrality and the governance of the internet has been no different. Post-COVID, there was a 30% increase in internet. And as all of us were guilty of binge watching Netflix and just increasing our internet consumption to either connect with friends and family or work through Zoom, everybody just started using more and more data, right? But telecom operators reported that a huge chunk of this increase in data happened through OTT services and video streaming services. Now, imagine a situation where there wasn't net neutrality and internet service providers were all powerful. Internet service providers have a situation where they can only accommodate a certain amount of data flow through their servers. So if we didn't have if we didn't have net neutrality, they would have autonomously said that, Netflix will get a certain slower category of data. So if that content which is flowing on our servers, if it's coming from Netflix, it's going to be slower as compared to Zoom or as compared to WhatsApp, right? And, it could have taken that decision unanimously. But because net neutrality existed, this wasn't an autonomous or unanimous process. And it all was open to the platforms themselves, and the platforms collectively decided that they will reduce the quality of data which is being streamed. So from HD data, from high definition data, they automatically reduced the quality in which the data was now being streamed, right? Now, I'm just trying to give you an example of why net neutrality is important, because it's very important for us to appreciate that through the process. Now, let us say Zoom is a platform that's competing with Skype. Microsoft, let's say, has great relations with Geo, right? Hypothetically. And it was, it saw that post-COVID, Zoom had a huge spike. If there wasn't net neutrality, and this is why net neutrality is important, what Microsoft could have done is it could have hypothetically tied up with Geo and said that for data originating on Skype, let the quality, let the data run at 40 Mbps a second. And for any data that's coming from Zoom, let it run at 1 Mbps a second. Now, as a user, when I go to Skype, I get amazing quality. My meetings run seamlessly. And then when I go to Zoom, I see pixelated images, the calls dropping repeatedly. Over time, Zoom stands no chance, right? The market is such that there is no competition, and a new product cannot come on the market. But because there is net neutrality, we see how even during the COVID scenario, there was equality in how different platforms are operating. So this is the basic story. This is you now up to date with what the net neutrality discussion in India today is. And for all of us who may think that, okay, post 2018 and post 2016, now the law seems perfectly clear. And given that there was so much civil society pressure in 2016, and then the DOT officially recognized net neutrality as a principle in 2018, the battle is won. I would say the battle is won, but there is still discussions like these, the one which we're having right now, is very important, because as the structure of the market changes, there are threats to the existing framework, right? So with the recent investment of Facebook, the recent investment that Facebook made in Geo, it bought 10% of stake in Geo. There are concerns that this may be a threat to net neutrality in the future. And I'll tell you how. Um, Facebook, as we know, is trying to get a share of the marketplace pie, right? Facebook is now becoming a marketplace in many other jurisdictions, and it wants to have a similar control of the market in India as well. Geo is something who's been trying to do that as well. But what Geo has and Facebook doesn't is Geo is the platform that Geo is the ISP that has these millions of users in India today, right? And Facebook has these two platforms through WhatsApp and through Facebook Marketplace that use the Geo infrastructure to connect these different users. So the threat to net neutrality is that if Facebook and Geo, two very powerful players, if they start lobbying the TRI, or if they start lobbying the government in order to dilute these net neutrality framework, dilute the net neutrality framework we have today, and if they try to weaken the framework in a way that Facebook and WhatsApp, if they have a marketplace of their own, Geo favors that. Can you imagine what kind of a competition threat that would be to other services which are operating in the same sphere, and the impact that it would have on consumer welfare in the long run? So this is a fight which is far from over. Yes, we're at a very strong place at this point in time. India is known to have one of the strongest net neutrality frameworks around the world. But discussions like these, the one we're having today, are super important, because like all other battles, this is not one which is fought in 6 months or in a year. The struggle to keep the internet free and open is one which is prolonged and which deserves constant engagement from all of us. So this is me giving you an idea of where we are today, and I'd now like to open it up to questions.
Thank you
So
so much,
what?
sir.
Yes. I now leave it to you to read the questions from chat, or moderate in a way that you deem best.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir, for your words of wisdom. And we have questions from our audience, which is, what are the emerging trends in net neutrality?
So around the world, we saw post-COVID, there was a change in the way internet was consumed, and that brought some challenges. For example, the European Commission also asked private platform operators to figure out a way in which access to the internet could be ensured, right? So let me flag the first trend for you in a way. The first trend is increasing access to the internet. Let me give you an example. The internet poses amazing opportunities for users out there, first time users and users in developing countries, in order to now use this pool of open information that exists, right? But there's also a threat of ISPs trying to gain monopoly over developing nations, so that when these nations grow and when there is a boom in the user base, these ISPs form virtual monopolies, or they are in such a controlling stake of the market that no other platform is able to survive in the long run. And through their predatory pricing in the beginning, they gain so much power that over the long run, no other ISPs have a chance, or no other platforms have a chance of survival. So increasing access to the internet while ensuring that it remains affordable, and while ensuring that the internet remains an equitable place for all, that is a major trend, and that is where many international organizations and domestic territories are drawing their focus to.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is net neutrality under Information Technology Act?
That's a good question. The Information Technology Act 2000, as it was amended in 2008, governs the internet, but net neutrality does not form a part of that. in a way that there is no explicit provision or there is no explicit legislation in India that deals with this. The governing framework is the 2016 regulation of the TRI and then the 2018 resolution of the DOT formalizing, accepting the TRI recommendations. So collectively, these govern the internet today. But for all other aspects, and I'm open to questions on other on governance of the internet in general and governance of Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn as well. For all other aspects, we are governed by the Information Technology Act and the Intermediary Guidelines, the Intermediate Guidelines Rules 2011, which are now in the process of being amended.
Thank you so much, sir. Next question is, how do we regulate e-crimes in countries that have limited technology development to even investigate such cases or lack capacity to do so?
Thank you. That's an interesting question and especially relevant for India. There was a series on Netflix that it was a multi-part series that spoke about, that just visualized and picturized how hundreds of people fell prey to banking scams and different kind of, scams for targeting individual consumers. In more developed economies as well, this does remain a threat. So we have identity theft, we have social security theft in the US. So the problem for developing and developed countries alike, especially for developing countries, I see a twofold approach which may be helpful. One, in terms of targeting the very users. So over time, media literacy in a way that users are made aware of the threats of operating, using the internet and carrying out transactions through the internet, and educating them of the pitfalls and how they can make themselves. And secondly, training of the authorities and ensuring that our enforcement authorities, our law enforcement authorities, they do get requisite training to investigate and prosecute crimes under the IT Act. So in India, these are the two focus areas that I think would be helpful.
Thank you so much, sir. Next question is, where do the government service provider like MTNL or BSNL stand with the competition with Geo or Facebook?
So in India today, out of the 100% telecom operations that exist, 97 is dominated by telecom services such as Geo and Airtel, and fixed line service providers only form 3% of the regulatory the market framework, but they are subject to similar rules because at the end of the day they are both ISPs, right? They both provide fixed line services such as MTNL, and for Geo and Airtel, they provide telecom, mobile data services. So they're governed by the same regulatory framework, but 97% of the market is held by telecom operators such as Airtel and Geo and others.
Thank you, sir. So, our participants want to know about netizens' rights.
If you could kindly elaborate on what kind of rights we're talking about, whoever's posed the question. And in the meantime, maybe we could take another question.
Sir, sure. So we'll take another question and I'll request the one who asked yes to just reframe it. And our next question is how the implications of net neutrality can be happen in practical sense. And please share the reason that's why the concerned authority have failed to implement them.
So this is a brilliant question because enforcement of the regulations is a very important aspect of this. So when the 2016 regulations came out by TRI was the regulatory and the enforcement authority, and in today's day there is, this is still there are calls for better enforcement because every time there is an effort to circumvent net neutrality provisions, net neutrality comes in the in public discussion again. So yes, there is a need for greater enforcement, and the way I see the way forward is TRI is already doing a good job in a lot of ways, But what is needed is constant stakeholder intervention and constant stakeholder consultation to ensure that TRI, when it proceeds with enforcing net neutrality principles or framing additional guidelines in the future, it keeps in mind the demands and needs of all the different stakeholders, not just telecom operators or users, but also human rights organizations, also technologists, and other stakeholders in different parts of the country. So stakeholder consultation is very, very important for any kind of enforcement actions in the net neutrality debate.
Thank you, sir. So next question is, can you please tell us about the more IT Act available in India except the IT Act 2008?
I'm sorry, your voice cracked. If you could please repeat that.
Sure, sir. So which all acts are available other than IT Act 2008 in India related to IT? Which all act or laws are available?
So different aspects of the telecom sector and different aspects of the internet are governed by different rules. For example, in the recent case of Anuradha Bhasin versus Union of India, where we were talking about internet shutdowns, the telecom service blocking rules were 2009 were in question. So in addition to the IT Act 2000, we look at the intermediary guidelines rules 2011 and the telecom blocking rules 2009. And when it comes to things such as phone tapping or surveillance, we're also looking at provisions of the Telegraph Act, which is 1885. If we could talk about, it's an interesting thing that you've spoken about, and of the different rules that form into, that come into question. I'm happy to, I'm throwing it back to the audience, but if you'd like to know more about internet shutdowns and how that is governed, I'd be happy to talk about that as well. But for now, I'm throwing it open to the audience again.
Thank you so much, sir. So next question is in related to the IT Act 2008. In short, if you can just differentiate between the IT Act 2000 and IT Act 2008, just in a few words, if you can.
Absolutely. There were some amendments due in provisions for punishments. So some punishments were made harsher. There were some other provisions introduced for protection of privacy, and violation of privacy became punishable under Section 66F, if I remember correctly. So yes, there are some changes that mostly in punishments, and it mostly, you have to keep in mind that in the 2000s, the internet free, the sector was very different, and 2008 was just making these changes in terms of punishments and in terms of regulating certain offenses, and those were the major changes. Since this is a long time back, I'm going to have to brush up my the comparison table in my head again. But yes, these are just some of the things that these are some of the things that come at the top of my mind.
Okay, sir. Thank you. The other question is, what is open internet rule in contrast to net neutrality?
So the open internet principle is the principle of there being equality in terms of how different kinds of content and different kinds of platforms are treated on the internet. If there is discrimination amongst different kinds of platforms or different kinds of users or different kinds of websites, or how the types of equipment that users are using in order to access the internet, then that would violate the open internet framework. Let me explain that by telling you how the internet works. So content on the internet flows through packets. So WhatsApp tells you that there is end-to-end encryption in your data, which means that when content flows from your device and then the server to another server through a network and finally to the device of another user, the ISP does not have access to that content, which means that it cannot open that data packet and inspect what content there is, right? So when you were sending a video or when you were sending a message, WhatsApp does not allow the ISP through its platform to open that data packet, right? And the open internet principle is that is a foundational aspect of net neutrality that says that ISPs should not be able to open these data packets and treat them differently, right? So if there is no discrimination and if there is equality in the way different data packets are treated and different users on the internet are treated and different platforms are treated, that is furthering the open internet principle. Is my internet connection stable? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Is the connection stable? Can you hear me?
Sir, now you're audible, but for the last 1 minute, your voice was cracking.
Okay. So if you could, I could repeat what I said. And if it starts freezing again, just let me know in the chat. But can you hear me properly now?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Now you are audible. If you can repeat it
Okay.
in just short, in a few words, then please.
Absolutely. So we were talking about how data or content on the internet flows. When WhatsApp says that it has end-to-end encryption, it means that when a data packet flows from my device to the server through an ISP and then onto a local server and then another user's phone, the ISP and WhatsApp both do not have access to that data packet, which means that it is encrypted at my end, and that encryption is decrypted when it reaches the device of the other user, which means that no player in the middle has access to the content of the information, has access to the content that I transmitted, which means that when I send a video through WhatsApp, or when I send a message through WhatsApp, it is encrypted on both ends. Now, what the open internet principle is, it is a part of the net neutrality principle that says that internet service providers should not be able to discriminate between different kinds of content or different kinds of users or different kinds of equipment that is being used to access these services, and that ensures that the internet is an open place, right? So this is a principle of equality on the internet.
Thank you, sir, as you informed us about ISP. My next question is, like TRI in India is looking after these type of matters, but is there any other governance or international level which sees on these matters?
So there are authorities at the domestic and international level as well. For example, in the US, the FCC, or the Federal Communications Commission, looks at issues of net neutrality. At the European level, the European Commission is in charge of competition issues and issues arising from telecom regulation and these issues in general. So there are different associations and different authorities at the domestic and the international level. For example, where I am in the UK, the ICO, the Information Commission's office looks at these issues. So these are governed through different authorities which have different powers in different countries. Some countries have a more robust power delivery mechanism to these authorities. Some have a weaker framework. But in India, the framework, the principles that we have for net neutrality are considered some of the strongest provisions across the world.
Thank you so much, sir. Our next question is, do domain name contribute for maintaining net neutrality?
So, if I understand the correction, if I understand the question correctly, it means that do individual websites play a role in ensuring net neutrality? The answer to that is, if there is net neutrality, then a website has to be treated at par with another website, which means that facebook.com cannot interfere as to how users will receive that content and at what speed it will receive that content versus youtube.com, right? But if there weren't network neutrality, if there weren't net neutrality, then individual websites would play a role in, you know, tampering with the framework and the structure of the internet.
Thank you so much, sir. So our next question is, what is your view on intermediary liability rules for ISP providers?
So the intermediary guidelines rules are currently being amended, and the government has been looking at them since 2018 in order to amend the intermediary guidelines. So there are a whole lot of aspects of intermediary guidelines, and one of them, which is particularly contentious, is what I'll tell you about, because that is what affects even me, the users, the most. And this is the liability that intermediaries face in terms of the content that is uploaded on their platforms. So let me tell you what that means. As per Section 79 of the IT Act, read with Rule 3 of the Intermediary Guidelines Rules 2011, um, internet service providers and platforms are not liable to civil liability for any content that is uploaded, which means that if I am a leader and if I make a hate speech using Facebook, Facebook will not be held guilty of circulating that fake, will not be held guilty of circulating that hateful video, unless there is a court order to the effect that asks Facebook to take it down. This is the law laid down by Shreya Singhal versus Union of India, which is a judgment of the Supreme Court. It's a judgment of Justice Nariman in 2015, right? As per the intermediary guidelines rules, which are currently being amended, there is a there is a there is a provision, there is a proposal that we now increase the liability of internet service providers and intermediaries such as social platforms, and we now require them to actively monitor content on their platforms. So, for example, as per law today, before this amendment, this proposed amendment, Facebook is not held guilty of any kind of content that circulates on its platform because it is what is considered a hosting provider. A hosting provider means that I am merely an intermediary. I am only providing the internet services through which users are communicating with each other. So I am the host. If you look at it in a way that, if I could, sort of for the uninitiated, if I were to draw an analogy, when there is, let's look at it this way, right? You throw a party and two people show up to that party and they say, tomorrow we are going to go out and we are going to commit petty theft. As of today, the way the internet is governed right now, the host, which is you who's throwing the party, or if this discussion is happening through Facebook, Facebook is not liable to know that this discussion is actively happening on its platform. But through the proposed rules, through the proposed amended rules, there will be increased liability on platforms to actively monitor content. And for certain kinds of harmful content, they would be required to take this down within 24 hours, even without a court order, right? And, so that is a very troubling aspect. That's a very troubling proposition for free speech and intermediary guidelines in general, because if platforms are now being held liable for the content that floats on their platform, they would start censoring more and more content, which would lead to what we call a chilling effect, which means that not only will users be scared of posting more content on these platforms because they know that there's a high degree of censorship, platforms now know that they will also be held liable as per the law for not taking it down actively. So they will start taking down more and more content because they're now worried of being, held liable by regulatory authorities, right? So this is my view on intermediary guidelines, the proposed rules and the proposed amendment. If there are other aspects of intermediary guidelines governance that you'd like to talk about, I'm happy to talk about them as well.
Thank you so much, sir. Our next question is about the agreement between the network and the broadcast. If you can share the details of it.
I'm sorry, but your voice cracked. If you could please repeat that.
Yeah, sir. Sir, if you please share the details of Netflix and Comcast agreement that happened.
I'm sorry, but your voice is still cracking. If you could, kindly, you know, if you could please try again.
Am I audible now, sir?
Yes, you are.
The question was, if you can please share the details of the Netflix and Comcast agreement.
That is something that I haven't explored myself, so I wouldn't want to. I probably need to read more on the agreement before I tell you.
Okay, sir. Uh, Sir, our next question is, what are the main pros and cons of net neutrality?
Ah, that's a very interesting question, and I like that we're moving to a fundamental question because so often we just stop questioning when somebody tells us that net neutrality is good, or for that matter, when anybody tells us that this is how it should be, especially when we're in law school or somebody with a little more experience is talking to us, we stop questioning. So I love that question. As to why net neutrality is important, we've spoken about how it ensures access to information, how it ensures equality on the internet, how it ensures equal access to the content that is available on the internet, and it ensures that no content is prioritized over a different kind of content. It also ensures that there is competition in the market between different platforms, and it allows for innovation in the sector, right? Now, what are the criticisms? This is something that the CEO of Google has spoken about, and various tech companies and various ISP providers often criticize net neutrality for this. They say that, so let me talk about two of these criticisms, right? The first criticism is tech companies often say, and ISP companies often say, that net neutrality should exist in a way that the same kind of content should not be discriminated against. So the services of Hotmail, which is an email service provider, should not be discriminated against compared to Facebook because they're providing the same kind of textual email correspondence services, right? So there should be no discrimination on that front. But you should allow us to discriminate between, let's say, Netflix that is using a lot more bandwidth of ours as compared to Gmail, which is only sending text messages. They say that ensures that there is better use of their infrastructure in a way that some users who are constantly streaming high definition Netflix in a particular a region, or it could be the world, or you, or through their infrastructure, do not negatively disenfranchise other users who are using the internet for more basic more basic services such as email, or let us say uh, studying online or e-education or something of that sort. So this is a criticism where ISPs and tech companies say that yes, if you are if you're forbidding discrimination between same kind of content, we agree and we're on board, but we should have the leeway in order to decide as to when to discriminate between different kinds of content, because it ensures that we can use our infrastructure and our resources a lot better. So this is the primary criticism that they get. Another criticism is what Facebook said. So when Facebook came out with its free basics program, it said that Facebook and the Wikimedia Foundation that runs Wikipedia, it says that our aim is to use the internet in order to connect more and more people. Now we understand that if you're a first time smartphone owner, or if you're a first time phone owner, and if you do not have access to, let's say, 40 GB of data a month, as Jio is now providing to many users in rural areas, you can only, let's say, afford 50 rupees a month on data. It is a part of our mission that we tie up with Geo, and we say that for Facebook and Wikipedia, you let people access these services in an unlimited manner, because it is just our way of ensuring that the society is connected. Wikipedia can say, we're providing you free access to a database of information. Why are you stopping us from doing that? If we want to get in touch with the ISPs and ensure that our services are now going to more people and we're giving this to them for free, why is it that you are stopping us from giving from giving our services to more people and connecting people for free. The counter argument to that is it's the same counter argument that you have for predatory pricing. The counter argument is that today, if Facebook and Wikipedia and BBC are the only websites or the only resources that everybody in rural India, or let's say rural UK or any place else start, or in any other country for that matter, if these are the only three platforms or the only three resources that all users start using, then 10 years down the line, if you start charging for these three services, and by that time you've ensured that there is no competitor of Wikipedia or Facebook or BBC, you then have a monopoly situation in the market where the users have no other option, right? So in the short run, this may seem all hunky-dory, but in the long run, it is very harmful for the structure of the internet and for free access to information and equal access to information and increased access to the internet in the long run. So these are the pros and cons, and I've also gone into what the counter arguments for the criticisms are.
Thank you so much, sir. We are with the last question, which is what could be the punishment and what are the punishment for the telecom companies for cheating, for example, call drops, excess billing, and all those.
Mm.
Are there
Mm.
any punishment decided?
Yes. So, like all other regulatory offenses, these are, there are fines and there are penalties, and in some cases there may be suspension or they may be monetary fines. And it is very similar in that case to a lot of other regulatory, the powers that other regulatory authorities have, and there do not exist any criminal sanctions in the sense that if a certain CEO starts violating net neutrality norms, they will be sent to prison for 10 years or anything like that. So these are regulatory penalties and regulatory sanctions.
So, panelists want to know for where are the sources they can know more about net neutrality or the books and or the authors, if you can inform them.
Absolutely. If you're looking at a website that you want to start looking at, you could start following the work of the Internet Freedom Foundation. You could look at Media Nama in India. These are, you could look at work originating from the Centernet for Internet in Society in Bangalore. The NLU Delhi also has a Center for Communications and Governance. These are organizations that work in the area. And if you're looking at academic material, you could look at writings from Professor Andrew Murray. He is he's been a consultant to the UK government and many other governments, and he's helped he's helped regulatory authorities across jurisdictions in framing some of these laws, and he writes on issues of information technology and the governance of cyberspace. He's a professor at LSE. You could also look at the writings of Professor Lawrence Lessig. He is also one of the most famous names out there. So these are just some of the resources. I'm happy to link you to more, if you're interested to explore more, and if you're looking to gain a more nuanced perspective, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be happy to share other resources as well.
Thank you so much, sir. The feedback form is available, is posted on the Zoom chat box. Every participant can go and give the feedback over there, which is very mandatory to avail the e-certificate. And with this, we come to the end of this session. Uh, on behalf of whole World Cybersecurity Forum, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our guest, Mr. Raghav. Mr. Raghav is not just the eminent speaker, but also the panelist with World Cybersecurity Forum. I would like to thank Sir Aditya Kedari from Symbiosis College, Pune. He is also panelist of World Cybersecurity Forum, who spend their busiest time from their busiest schedule to grace us with their presence. Today, we had the opportunity to hear Sir Raghav's views on net neutrality and regulations of internet, and this will surely help us, sir, in our future. I would like to thank SCC Online for their collaboration. At the end, I would like to thank all the attendees. Without you all, it would not be possible. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining. This is a great. It's very encouraging to see over 100 people on a Saturday evening. So thanks for joining, and it is a pleasure to speak with all of you today. Okay, bye bye.